know for me, for so many years in the sector, I felt like ambition was this sort of label that showed I was greedy or wasn't in it for the cause. And I want us to reclaim that because I think when we are more ambitious for ourselves, we can be more ambitious for the causes we care about. Something's shifting in the nonprofit sector. Experienced professionals are done waiting for permission, and they're building consulting businesses that pay them what they're worth on their terms. This is Fracture, the podcast about the business of nonprofit fractional consulting for consultants and the people who are about to become one. I'm Cindy Wagman, founder of the Nonprofit Fractionals Network. Let's get into it. Used to think the salary hit was just part of the deal. You go into nonprofit work, you earn less, and you carry it like it means something. Like the sacrifice itself is proof that you care. I did that for years. And what I know now is that the low pay wasn't about the mission. It was about a sector that learned it could ask for sacrifice and people would give it. It's not a value. It's a bargain that only runs in one direction. Welcome to Fracture. I'm Cindy Wagman, founder of the Nonprofit Fractionals Network. If you've been in our community, you already know this show. It's been accessed through a private podcast feed for a while now. We've been having real conversations behind a door most people didn't even know existed. And that was right for a while. People talk differently when they know who's in the room. But there are people who need this conversation who don't know it exists yet. So we're making it public. If you're brand new here, let me tell you who this show is for. You've probably been in the nonprofit sector for a while, long enough to be good at it, really good, long enough to notice some things. You've watched people come in, get trained, and get promoted past you. You've written a strategy that a consultant billed $15,000 for and took your work with their name on it. And you've watched the salary band stay flat while your responsibilities kept climbing. You might have even had people on your team leave or within your organization leave, and you've absorbed their jobs with no extra pay or benefits. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a thought has started showing up that you haven't let yourself say out loud yet. What if there's another way to do this work? Or you've already made the move. You've left. You call yourself a consultant now. Yay! And maybe it's going well. Maybe it's more terrifying than you expected. Maybe you're working harder than you did in-house and charging less than you quote unquote should, and you're slowly recreating the exact burnout you were running from. Fracture is for you. In every episode, we'll talk about what it actually looks like to build a fractional consulting business in this crazy sector of ours. We go through real numbers, real frameworks, real stories from people who've done this work already or people who serve consultants doing this work. And we are no longer gatekeeping. So before I tell you my story, I want to name the thing that keeps more people stuck than anything else I've seen. The belief that impact and income are opposites. That if you're doing meaningful work, work that matters, work in our nonprofit sector, you earn less. And the earning less is somehow the proof that you care. And you also end up working more. Again, this idea of self-sacrifice because our work is so important. And it is so important. But I want to shift this for you. I want you to think about what happens when we stop the self-sacrifice and we actually get what we need from our work, how that allows us to show up better, how it allows us to better serve organizations, because this is the goal. The goal is that we get uplifted and uplift others, that when we're thriving, we can better help the organizations thrive. So our sector has set us up. And I know for me, for so many years in the sector, I felt like ambition was this sort of label that showed I was greedy or wasn't in it for the cause. And I want us to reclaim that because I think when we are more ambitious for ourselves, we can be more ambitious for the causes we care about. So let's get into it. If you're new here, let me start by talking about what fractional consulting is, because it is a different model. It's one that lets you keep everything that brought you to the sector, right? The relationships, the work you care about, the proximity to emissions, and build a business that pays you what you're actually worth and gives you time that you so desperately crave to prevent burnout, to be with your loved ones, to engage in hobbies, all of those things that we felt like we had to trade off. So you get impact and income and a business that makes sense for you. So let me tell you a little bit about my own personal journey that led me here. And it actually starts when I entered the sector, which is immediately after I graduated from university. In fact, while I was in university, I already knew I wanted to be in the nonprofit sector. I wanted to fundraise, and I wrote a thesis on feminist fundraising. Yes, I was that nerdy. And what happened my very first job out of university? First of all, I went to work at a women's shelter. At the beginning, it was run as a collective, which means every Tuesday, we would have an all management all day meeting, which is a whole other story. But that fundraising job, I was the first and only hired fundraiser for the organization. So I came in and there were some good donors and also some bad fundraising ideas. So selling cookbooks or holiday cards or putting coin boxes at the local liquor store. All of these were things that the board wanted us to do. And if you're listening to this and you're a fundraiser, you know it's ridiculous. But if you're listening and you're not a fundraiser, maybe you're a marketer or a finance person or HR, these are the kinds of like wild suggestions that people make when they know nothing about your work, right? Where they think they're informed. And so they're telling you, oh, we need this, we need that, but they're wrong. And I experienced this firsthand in that organization. And I was there for 4 years. And when I left, they really struggled to find someone to replace me. The turnover was quite high. Like every year or so, they'd have a new fundraising person. And so as I started consulting in 2015, I looked at the kinds of organizations and the kinds of problems I wanted to solve. And I knew it was those small organizations who didn't have the financial capacity to hire someone with a lot of experience. And so they recreated that experience that I had, which is you hire someone junior. Everyone is telling them what to do. Most of the time, the advice is wrong. And you spend a lot of time wasting time, right? You spend a lot of time doing things that don't move the needle. And I thought the biggest thing that I could do was work with those organizations, get the work done, but do it in a way that was so focused that we weren't creating all these extra things. And so I started. I mean, my journey to consulting is a little bit longer than that. I started with one fractional contract that was amazing. It actually paid me more than I was making in-house with just one contract. That's not usually the case. But it was great. So I started consulting and I started playing around with this idea of like, what if we did the fundraising for these small organizations? 2 years in, I hired my first intern, which turned into a staff position. And we were really busy. We had a team and we were working with, I've closed over $1 million in fractional contracts. And during COVID, things were even busier. And I decided I didn't have the bandwidth or desire to grow my business more to meet the need. So instead, I was going to find other people who I could refer business out to, and I'd teach them the business side of things. That was late 2021. And by 2022, I had a growing network of folks who I was teaching how to run their own fractional businesses. And by 2023, we launched the first curriculum of what is now the nonprofit fractional operating system. So I have since trained over 100 people in the nonprofit sector on how to start and run their fractional consulting business. But I want to take a minute to tell you about my early experience doing this work because, like I said, my first contract was essentially, we didn't call it that at the time, but it was essentially fractional. And I went from like working beyond 9 to 5 every day at my last job. My boss would call me on my way home from work and we'd talk on the phone for the 20-minute commute, literally almost every day. And I went from that and like feeling like I was constantly giving. And had no time. It was very corporate, to being in charge of my own time and life. And in those early days, especially when my kids were young, I used to do field trips with them during the day and, get to pick them up from school on time and all these things that I just never imagined I would be able to do as someone who worked full time. And now I don't go on field trips with them anymore because they think that's the most embarrassing thing in the world. But I do get to, drive them to soccer practice, or I got to recently take a few days off work randomly because we had family in town and we got to go play tourists in our own city. And that is the kind of life that I want for all of us, where we don't have to choose. We still get to do good work, but we also get to spend time with our loved ones, do the things we want to do. And so the guiding principle in the Nonprofit Fractionals Network and in this business is that it's not either or. It's always both and, or yes and. And if you look at the like a slash, which is a symbol of a fraction, it obviously means fraction, which is fractional, but also it is the sort of both and, right? That you get to live in both spaces. So that's my story, and I want to just give you a little bit of a heads up of what you can expect from this podcast. Every week we have a new episode. Sometimes it'll just be me working through a framework or naming something that comes up in my work that I see with fractionals. And oftentimes I'll bring in guests, whether they're alumni from my program or other folks I know who've made this journey, and of course sometimes people who serve consultants. And these are the behind the scenes conversations that I'm having in real life that I want to bring to you. So this isn't cheerleading, not because I don't believe in you, I definitely do. But you don't need to be cheered at. You need real information, real stories, real ideas from people who have done this. So what I want from you to do is go ahead and subscribe to this show where you listen or watch podcasts, okay? That is so important both for you to make sure you're getting new episodes, but also so other people get the benefit of finding the show. And of course, if you could leave a review, that also helps other people find it. So subscribe wherever you are listening. And of course, if you want to go deeper, I have a weekly email that is sent out. You can find that at nonprofitfractionals.com/subscribe. I will see you next week. You've been listening to Fracture. Subscribe wherever you're listening and come find me at nonprofitfractionals.com/subscribe for more of this goodness in your inbox every week. Now go build something better.